As Susanna got closer, she took William's arm. "You're breaking my heart. You'd better make it up to me today, or I'll be truly upset." Relieved, William smiled faintly. "Whatever the lady commands, tell me what you want, and I'll do it," William replied. "You'll regret making that promise. I'm not easy to please," Susanna warned playfully. By the end of the day, William had spent lavishly accompanying Susanna with uncharacteristic attentiveness. A single handbag trade-off had yielded returns, threefold as a gesture of goodwill. The Rossington family even offered Susanna shares in their company during the prenuptial negotiations, feigning gratitude. Susanna hugged William tightly. "William, you're so good to me. You make me feel so cherished." "Thank you for loving me," Susanna said, knowing this was the best response. Firm, strategic, and sweetened with just the right amount of affection to be loved is one thing, but to know one deserves it is quite another. "Thank you for the gift, William," Susanna added with an elegant smile. For the thought behind it, William Rossington seemed pleased, and his affection score ticked up by another 5 points, reaching 70. Victory was within sight. That evening, Susanna Connery and William watched fireworks together on a private beach. The distinguished air of the Rossington family surrounded them as they grilled meat for Susanna, while she sipped the wine that William had carefully chosen, offering him occasional words of encouragement. The vast night sky glittered with stars, and the waves crashed against the rocks in a soothing rhythm that resonated from the depths of Susanna's heart. Susanna sighed to the system. "Money truly makes life wonderful." The system's electronic voice responded with a rare, almost eerie chuckle. "Once you succeed, you'll be very wealthy." "Too curious?" Susanna asked. "Has anyone ever claimed the 60 billion before?" The system replied, "No." After a pause, the system added almost hesitantly, "Perhaps your approach is the right one. Previous hosts always tried to win the male lead's love directly, but sadly, he never realized his feelings until after the host's death. Only then would his affection skyrocket." Susanna laughed softly. It seemed that what was unattainable was always the most precious. Some people were just like that, incapable of cherishing what was right in front of them. Once it was gone, they scrambled to hold on, but life didn't hand out second chances so freely. Susanna posted a few pictures from the day to her social media. Katrina Routledge didn't like the post, but Susanna knew Katrina had seen it. Meanwhile, William fumbled through 3 phone calls, his expression increasingly anxious. "Is something urgent?" Susanna asked lightly. William shook his head. Nothing mattered more than being here with Susanna. The irony in the original story. Susanna Connery never heard a single kind word from William. By the time William dropped Susanna off at home late that night, William asked, "Susanna, did you have a good time today?" Susanna studied William for a moment, then replied with a smile, "What do you think?" Before William could respond, Susanna opened the car door and stepped out, turning back to William. "Don't ask me if I'm happy. Ask yourself." It was late, but Robert, Susanna's father, was still awake, pretending to read a newspaper. Susanna noticed her father's newspaper was upside down. Figuring it was a surprise, Susanna looked up at him. "You're back out with the Rossington boy," her father remarked. Susanna nodded in response. "Didn't you already know?" Her father coughed lightly and replied, "I'm just concerned about you." Susanna walked over, sitting beside him and resting her head on his shoulder. "Dad, I want to start managing the company." He paused, clearly caught off guard by the mention of William Rossington. Susanna frowned and asked, "What does he have to do with this? It's my decision." "But you've always avoided company matters." "Too much hassle, you said," Susanna sighed. Susanna's expression turned serious. Susanna had contemplated this truth. In the end, individuals must rely on themselves. Susanna's father had always envisioned a simpler life for her. If Susanna didn't want to manage the business, her father would find her a capable husband, ensuring she lived in comfort. However, plans, no matter how meticulous, could always change. If a woman did not take control of her own fate, even the best intentions could crumble. "Have you really thought this through?" Susanna asked, her tone firm. "It's no small matter. Once you take this step, there's no turning back." Susanna nodded resolutely. Susanna declared her readiness, expressing a desire to steer her own course. News of Susanna's decision made William uneasy. A flicker of panic appeared in William's eyes, as though something he had always taken for granted was slipping out of his control. William teased, though not entirely joking, "Are you planning to become a career woman? And why not?" Susanna replied with a faint smile. "We'd make a strong team besides. I can't let you shoulder all the burden." William had no grounds to object, but he seemed quietly irked. Nonetheless, the system chimed in. Puzzled, the system inquired whether Susanna Connery was worried that her actions would lower William Rossington's affection score. Susanna shrugged, expressing confidence that if it dropped, she would simply earn it back. There were plenty of things William did not want her to do. In the original story, Susanna Connery had bent over backward for him. The system reflected on how that had ended for her, falling silent as though temporarily disconnected. Susanna's reasons were clear. In the original story, the Connery family had faced a crippling financial crisis, and it was William Rossington who came to their rescue. That act of salvation had bound Susanna to him. Susanna Connery had fallen hopelessly in love. But Susanna had no intention of being indebted to William Rossington. On the contrary, Susanna much preferred to create a situation where William had to come to her for help. The family's crisis was simple: a broken cash flow. In the original story, it was barely touched on, with Susanna oblivious to the company's troubles. Now, with her father's blessing, Susanna began taking on responsibilities and digging into the issue. Meanwhile, Susanna maintained appearances, going on occasional dates with William Rossington and keeping him close. The more attention Susanna received, the more restless Katrina Routledge became. Katrina clung desperately to the past, hoping to reignite something with William. It was foolish. If Susanna were in Katrina's position, she would leverage whatever time she had left to secure her future, using William as a springboard to escape her circumstances. Instead, Katrina remained trapped in a feudal struggle. Late one night, Katrina sent Susanna a photo of William's profile, only to delete it seconds later. Clearly, William Rossington had gone to Katrina Routledge to vent. William must not have been in the best mood. Katrina was losing her patience. Susanna Connery told the system that William went to Katrina. "Doesn't that upset you?" the system asked. "Why would it?" Susanna replied. William's affection score was at 77 now, but wasn't this betrayal? Susanna laughed. "It's only betrayal. If it surprises me in this case, I was counting on it." Susanna ignored Katrina's provocation, pouring her energy into the company. Instead, men might betray Susanna. But her career wouldn't, after all. With money, what man couldn't be kept? Whenever Susanna had free time, she made sure to keep William's affection score climbing. With 60 billion on the line, Susanna Connery realized she could not afford to forget William Rossington. While William wavered between two women, Susanna began representing her father at business events, stepping into the spotlight as the new face of Connery Enterprises. No longer just a wealthy socialite, Susanna became the CEO, the rising leader of a corporate empire. Oh, the younger generation is truly remarkable, someone remarked. Engaged to the Rossington heir, another added. Old Rossington is sharp-eyed. If William Rossington hadn't secured her, Jonathan Connery would have introduced her to his son in a heartbeat. Their flattery contained a kernel of truth. It was recognition. Jonathan had earned respect and status that were not freely given. They were taken through effort. The system, observing Jonathan pour so much effort into the company, finally asked, "Host, you could have raised his affection in simpler ways. Why choose this path?" After a brief pause, Jonathan replied, "When I leave this world, will the original Susanna Connery return?" "Yes," the system confirmed. "Once your task is complete, she will resume her life." Susanna massaged her temples and smiled faintly. Then, she thought of it as leaving Katrina a gift. It was only fair to help her. While Susanna was here, even a fragile girl, devastated by love, might find herself feeling as if life held no meaning anymore. But Susanna hoped everything she had done would show Katrina this. A man's love is insignificant. Their journey should be toward the stars and the vast seas. Life offered so much more to pursue than the trivialities of romance. In the original plot, neither Susanna's father nor William Rossington ever considered allowing her to walk independently. And therein lay the tragedy of Susanna Connery, cloaked in well-meaning intentions. Everyone around Susanna smothered her agency until Susanna's world shrank to nothing. If one truly loves someone, one should equip that person with armor, hand them a sword, and teach them to survive. Not lock them in a glass house where the slightest sunbeam might wither them to death under Meister, Connery's guidance. Susanna took over most of Connery Enterprises and even introduced new ventures, breathing fresh life into the old corporation. Through careful analysis of the vague plot details, Susanna Connery discovered the catalyst for the family's financial downfall, a piece of land in West City. Susanna's father had discussed it with great enthusiasm, believing it would be the city's future center. If the family could secure development rights there, they would be set for the next decade. Susanna dampened her father's optimism with a cold splash of reality. Buying it would tighten their cash flow significantly. "Besides, Dad, are you so certain this area will develop as planned?" Susanna asked, as her father frowned. William reviewed the city's plans. This location was isolated and undeveloped. Even if it did grow, it would require a huge investment of time and resources. They could, of course, buy a slice of the future. But Susanna pointed to the map. If the city's expansion is as William said, why hasn't a new transit line been planned here already? William froze. The realization dawned slowly before his expression shifted after a long silence. He stood patting Susanna's shoulder. His eyes glistened slightly. "Susanna, you're doing well. Now your mother can rest easy." Susanna hugged her father, silently sighing to herself. Gregory Connery was a traditional man. It wasn't that Gregory didn't love Susanna. He simply never envisioned her standing on her own. Gregory's quiet, stoic love shielded Susanna from life's storms, but it also left her vulnerable and overly sensitive. The Rossington family seemed interested in the land too. Gregory mentioned casually that in the story the male lead had plot armor. Naturally, Connery Enterprises ended up buying the land, an investment that proved disastrous. However, if Susanna stepped away from the auction, would William Rossington still be so lucky with a smile? Susanna pressed her hand against the map, addressing her father. Business is business. Whether the Rossington family sees the truth is their own problem. Mr. Connery chuckled, shaking his head. No regrets. None, Susanna replied cheerfully. Honestly, Susanna would love for William Rossington to go bankrupt. That would give Susanna the perfect opportunity to swoop in as his savior, forcing him to kneel and call her his benefactor. Under her instruction, Connery Enterprises prepared a detailed proposal, pretending to participate in the auction that weekend. William and Susanna met up, and William teased, "So, Susanna, you're competing against me now?" Susanna raised an eyebrow. What, afraid? William smirked, confident. Are we fair? Competition is all about confidence. Susanna shot back. William applauded mockingly. I like the spirit. Just don't cry and beg for mercy later. Who cries is yet to be determined, Susanna replied with a sly smile. Just as the Connery family couldn't handle this project, neither could William in the original story. But Susanna wanted him to win the bid. Only then could she appear in his life as a savior, just as he had for Susanna Connery. Susanna toiled away on new projects, often burning the midnight oil. William was busy celebrating Katrina Routledge's birthday. Katrina's provocations never ceased. Yet William's affection for Susanna never wavered. In fact, it even increased. The system inquired, puzzled by William's behavior. Why does William's affection for you reach 80 while he's still doting on Katrina Routledge? To the system, it was a baffling conundrum. But to Susanna, it was simple. Liking apples doesn't mean one would never eat a banana in William's world. Susanna Connery and Katrina Routledge were merely apples and bananas, interchangeable and lacking true individuality. At this moment, William Rossington's affection for Susanna surpassed Katrina's, only because Susanna was more sensible and, frankly, more valuable in the original story. Once William took over Connery Enterprises, Susanna lost her utility and became a disposable plaything. Putting all one's hopes in a man is the stupidest thing one can do from the start. Susanna never considered Katrina a true rival. William's opinion of Susanna was never determined by Katrina's existence. If not Katrina, there would always be another Katrina. One afternoon, Susanna sat across from Katrina in a cafe. Katrina tried to appear composed, but her eyes betrayed her unease. You know the truth, Katrina began lightly. So why hold on to William? He doesn't love you. Susanna stirred her coffee lazily, a faint smile tugging at her lips. And how do you know that? Miss Routledge, we're engaged. It's hardly your place to judge. Katrina lifted her chin as if the posture might lend her confidence. The memories I share with William. Katrina leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking with Susanna's in a deliberate show of dominance. Tell me then, will William marry you? Katrina's confidence wavered. You're only with him because of your family. What's so great about that? Susanna tilted her head, allowing a trace of confusion to cross her face. Does my family control the world? Did my father force William into this engagement? Katrina stammered. Has William ever objected to our arrangement?